presentation. Also, you can hide the webinar control panel by pressing the button on the left side of your control panel. It has a white arrow pointing to the right with an orange background. That'll minimize the box and allow you to see the entire presentation. Now I'd like to hand it over to our speaker for today, Coach Diederich. Again, Coach, we are honored to have you with us. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Cale. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening with you guys, and thank you for taking the time to be here. Hopefully I can share some things that benefit to you, whether you're here because you run the FlexBone offense or interested in running it or looking for ways to defend it. I don't know that I can help you do that. I've never personally defended the FlexBone, but have been running it for about close to 20 years. Been running it for 15 years at my current school. Prior to that, I spent a couple of years learning this style of offense with a former coach that I worked for my first few years of coaching. I've been coaching for close to about 22 years, and the majority of it has been spent running this style of offense, something that I really enjoyed. At the school I'm at, we've been really fortunate to be consistent over the 15 years I've been here. We won 4 state titles, a couple of runners-up, and several other deep runs in the playoffs with kids that most people would probably call program-type players, hard-working, overachieving kids that really buy into what we're doing. And so this style of offense really fits them. Before we get into the combination triple play or the way we run triple option, I'd like to just go through a few basics of our style of FlexBone, just so you know where we're coming from. We're a 3A school in Louisiana, which is middle of the classification. We have 5 classes. We play with all schools in Louisiana. We're not separated. So we see the best of the best in Louisiana for whatever that may be, and we compete against all of them. But in the past 2 years, we've started separating once we get to the playoffs with public schools and private schools. But in the regular season, we still compete against them. And then prior to the last 2 years, we've always competed against public and private. So that's our situation in terms of classification and where we rank in the state. Let's see, Cal. Trying to get to trying to advance this.
Coach, if you click, it should move to the next one.
I'm going to enter.
Try that over the right arrow key.
Let's see. No.
Make sure your PowerPoint is selected.
Let's see. Okay, let's go to the next one. I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't want to wear everybody out a bunch of philosophies, but I think it's important to note in this age of spread wide open football, this is certainly a little different than most kids see. I think when you run this style of offense with your coaches, it's important that everybody has an all-in mentality, that you don't want to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because it is a lot different than what the kids see on television and frankly, what they see a lot of teams run that they play against. But we believe in running a consistent system, having an identity. I always feel like it's a work in progress in terms of, we don't look for new offenses in the offseason. We look for ways to get better at what we're doing, to solve problems that teams have caused us during the past season. And we believe in running basically the same offense, whether it's 3rd and 2 or 1st and 10, 2-minute offense, short yardage. We're basically running our same schemes. It may be in a different mode, different formations. We believe in few schemes and formations. We try to always keep it simple for our big kids up front. And any kind of window dressing or bells and whistles, whatever you want to call it, comes from our skill guys. And we only run formations that we can run most of our options and the bulk of our offense from. We don't believe in being feast or famine with the option. It's certainly what we start with when we build our offense around, but we believe in a good mix of non-option run game. And I think it's important to be willing to throw the football in this offense, especially since the pre-snap potential is great, because you don't see a lot of blitzing. You see a lot of very vanilla coverages, a lot of one-on-one matchups if that favors you. And the defense is just not showing up to the game in a pass rush, pass defense mindset for the most part. So Those are some of the philosophies we believe in. Reasons why I believe in the flex bone itself. And it's what I cut my teeth on, and I always have enjoyed and saw the effectiveness of this offense from the first time I learned it. But these days, you can say few teams run it. A lot of times, you may be the only team that team has seen, your opponent has seen run it all year long. It's a team-oriented offense, and for personnel reasons, it's easier to find players to fit this kind of system than maybe some conventional style offenses or ones that may require, better athletes. We don't want to be an offense that's just looking for a player to make plays because we don't have those kind of kids most of the time. We're an offense based on execution and effort. It's a solid foundation, but also has flexibility. People think the flex bone is a lot more rigid than it is. Over the course of 15 years, we've played a lot of the same teams. So we've had to become creative and innovative sometimes just to keep our offense effective. And I think it has a great potential for not only throwing the ball, as I mentioned, but also a good complementary offense as well. Reasons why we like the flex bone. A few things I think you got to recognize about this offense, whether it's coaches working for you or kids or people, on the outside of your program, they're going to knock this style of offense a little bit. If you haven't noticed already, if you run this stuff, but the first thing I say, it's just like what they hear on television. It struggles to play from behind. Well, I know a lot of offensive coordinators, and none of them really like to play from behind, more so than any other offense. It struggles in 2-minute situations. I care to differ. We emphasize 2 minutes a lot because you don't want to be at the end of a half or a ball game and not be ready for that. Sure, we want to all stay in the comfort zone of having a good control and tempo of the game. But if you have to use this situation, we've been very, very successful doing it. To say it struggles in long down the distance is true, but that's true of every offense, in my opinion. You're going to see 8, 9-man front defenses. You're going to see those types of fronts. I don't care if you're in spread or not. If you don't threaten them, or if they're not threatened by your speed or ability to throw the ball, they're going to crowd you. But the flex bone is built to run against those types of fronts. High risk, a lot of turnovers. We've been plus in turnovers every year that I've been here because we emphasize ball security. We wrap it in our drills and fundamentals. One year we were plus 24 in turnovers 2 years ago. We won state. So it's what you emphasize with the players, the offense itself. I mean, whether you're throwing it around a yard or pitching it and riding it inside, the ball's vulnerable if you do not make it a matter of priority. As far as the quarterback getting hit a lot, more vulnerable to injury, I know from experience that a quarterback is more vulnerable sitting in the pocket where he's defenseless, more so than with his pass down running. So we have had very few quarterbacks get injured over the course of 15 years. So I don't believe in these myths about this offense, but it's certainly things that you're going to hear as criticisms. A few things we do differently with this style of offense. One thing you can see there in the picture is that I put my fullback in a 2-point stance. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but that's not the focus of this talk. So, I'm not scared to be a little bit different. One way that we are different and some things that we emphasize with our offense. We only have one goal on offense, and that's to score one more point, basically to do what we can to help win the game. No other stats matter. Our kids never go into games saying we got to rush for 300 yards, throw for this, or they be this percentage on third down or second down. I never talk numbers with them except that one. Let's figure out a way to get one more point than those guys. The things we do emphasize is what we call TNTs, take no talent. And those are things that every kid can do regardless of how good they are, how talented or how big they are. We want to make them beat us without us messing it up. If at the end of the game, and I was telling Kel this earlier, that if you come out of a game knowing you did everything you possibly could in preparation and playing, you can hold your head up high, whether you won the game or not. But we want to play hard, physical, and unselfish. We want to play smart, disciplined, have game awareness, and take care of the football. Every player on our team can do those 3 things without any special, ability. We emphasize what we call 11 and 1. There's only one ball, and 11 players, so we have to be unselfish. In an age of kind of numbers games with catches and throws and yardage, we want to be guys that play hard without the football, and we talk about it takes all 11 to make a good play and only one to mess it up. Our install progression is starting right now at this point of the year, January. When we start meeting and talking football with our kids, we want them to understand our offensive philosophy. And if they don't like it, they can't get on board with it, then they don't need to play it. They go somewhere else. But this is what we believe in. It's what we sell to our program, our kids in our program. We teach them offensive basics, our terminology, how we identify fronts, all this before we ever teach a play. And then once we start teaching the play, we teach the concept of the play and we emphasize rules. Every play in our offense has rules tied to each position, and we think it's critical that they know their role. We want them to understand the fact. We had a kid, and I put the letters PC up there about play fast. That's for a young man that played in our program several years ago. Not to get into a long story, but he was as least of an athlete as you would ever see. But when the ball was snapped, he played faster than anybody because he was mentally focused and in tune to what he's doing. And that mental preparation made him a lot faster player on the field than a watch ever would. And so we talk about that anticipation, fastball, playing fast mode. Then the last two things is teaching techniques and fundamentals covered on the field. And then, over the course of time, they learn what their fastballs, exception, and adjustments to each play are. Fastballs for us is the most difficult thing that your opponent can do to you on the snap of the football. That's what you're ready for, just like the baseball analogy. You're ready for the fastball, react to the curve. So that's our teaching progression with our players. This is all under the criteria of what we do a little differently. Our fullback's in a 2-point stance. I think most true flex boners would probably balk at that and say, "No, I would never do that. It's going to hit too slow." But after studying it for many years and looking at a lot of fullbacks that are not built to be in a 2-point stance, a little stiff or a little thick, end up raising straight up and they hit the crease high. So I had a kid like that a few years ago, and I got tired of beating my head against the wall, so I put him in a 2-point stance, and I liked all the other advantages of it. You just have to work him hard on staying low from a 2-point stance. And I love it. I wouldn't do it any other way now. If I ever thought it sacrificed the ability for us to mesh cleanly and get reads, I wouldn't do it. But we've been doing it for 4 years now, and the results have been really good. We've been to state finals twice, won once, and semifinals. So I'm happy with it. Our halfbacks are a little deeper than most. They're not no wishbone. They're not up there connected to the tackle. They're kind of in no man's land, somewhere in between. And I got this from watching Army a couple of years ago. Same thing as a fullback. I got tired of telling our halfbacks they're too deep when they were wanting to cheat back on everything because the angle was friendlier to them. So we finally found a middle ground that we try to stick with. And our O-line is only 2-foot split, which is a little tighter than most flexbone teams. And we line up about the middle of the center with our helmets. So we're not way back off the ball with real big splits like a lot of flex teams. We're kind of in the middle of the road just because of our abilities and the way we block some of our plays, specifically our combo triple. To get in a little quickly about our playlist, game planning, and play calling, that's our offense right there. And guys, if I don't say it enough, whatever's mine is yours. So I have my email address at the end of this presentation, and feel free to text me, call me, email me. I'll give you anything I have. Like Coach told me one time, there's no secrets in football. The secret is how to get those teenagers to play hard Friday night, knowing what to do. And but this is certainly something I would be glad to share with you. Our core run game is those plays, and our complementary run game complements our core game. Our passing game, which we're not going to talk about tonight, is broken up into our core passing and complementary passing game as well. Game planning, I want to point out a few things that's different in this offense. It's more about us being ready for anything we might see than really trying to figure out the defense. The biggest thing we do try to figure out maybe what fronts we're going to see. And sometimes that's harder than others if we haven't played that team. But you run this offense, the problems with it when you've done it long enough. You try to have schemes ready because really on Friday night, you don't know what you're going to get until that first snap. So even though we don't have a lot of plays that we run, there's a lot of things that we have to be ready for with those plays. But regardless of game planning, game adjusting, seeing what the defense is really trying to do to you, all the coaches' eyes on something specific and communicating is just as critical as game planning. We never go into a game with a script of plays or a lined out predetermined list. It's plays that we got to call off the hip based on what they're doing. And I'll talk more about that in a second. There's a lot of ways we get to our ultimate play call. We try to call plays with the team in mind and the quarterback, his abilities and what he's struggling to do or doing well with. But game situation, down the distance, I don't believe in being a selfish play call. I don't want to call a play just because I want to see this. I want to call it because it's what our team needs. Do we need to milk the clock a little bit here? Do we need to throw it a little bit more? Whatever the team needs in our situation. The offense and defense is working together. It's not separate components. So I don't want to be a selfish play caller. Our play call to me is a logical decision based on gathered information from different things, game plan and input, what we see during the game. We have a few safety calls from what we call line of scrimmage systems and lookovers. We very rarely call a play blind unless we just know what we're getting from the defense. And we don't go into the game always trying to establish something. People say in this offense you want to establish a fullback, sure. But if the defense just really does not want you to establish it, they're going to take that away. So you got to be willing to get to other things that may be more beneficial. And sometimes it's not an option play. It may be a counter play or some type of pass that really gets us going on any given night. Personnel in our offense, quarterback is the same guy everybody's looking for. The man that can make the decisions and do the physical things and mental things you ask him to do, as well as having those intangibles. A lot of coaches, they have the things that you want your quarterback to have. Our halfbacks are very versatile players. We call them tiebacks. One is T, one is Y. So collectively we call them ties. But very versatile back that we say they've got to be good at a lot of things, but not necessarily great at any of them. I think it's important to have two complete backs instead of maybe one real good one. Our fullback's a little less versatile, more of a crease runner that can cut, is physical. Split ends, we want talented guys too, even though we don't throw it a lot. But those guys have to be athletic enough to block in space against pretty good defenders too. So that's what we're looking at from our skill guys. Our linemen, we're looking for the best lineman at our center position that can snap the football. Our guards are more of our big, bulky kids that can hold their ground and hopefully get moving when they're covered a lot in four-man fronts. Our tackles need to be a little bit more of our athletic kids that can handle themselves in space against edge players. Also, they need to be a little smarter. More of our adjustments go through the tackles than the guards. A tight end for us is not a base position, but it's a critical position that we use a lot. And our tight end is either a sixth offensive lineman. He could be a true tight end. It's usually a starter on defense. Could be a big split end if you can get down there and maintain those blocks. And their assignments are kind of a combination of tackle and halfback rules. A few line of scrimmage basics I think worth pointing out. We were a core huddle team. For a couple of years, we were no huddle, which I like, but we were not a fast-paced tempo no huddle like on Oregon or somebody. We just used it to kind of get to a good rhythm, look over the defense and those kind of things. But we got into a lot of communication, so we didn't see much more advantage of it. So we kind of went to an abbreviated huddle. We huddle our core positions. Our wideouts never huddle. And I really liked it. But there are a lot of advantages to no huddle, no doubt about it. Mostly for us now in practice. And also to get a lot more reps in practice, but also to still be ready for 2-minute offense. So the no huddle lingo that we use a lot, we don't use wristbands or cards or anything like that. We're verbiage and signals in our no huddle mode. So we haven't gotten away from it. We just went to more of a core huddle type deal this year. All right, now to some nuts and bolts here. Our formations, like most flex zone teams, we don't have a ton of formations because you want to be able to make a defense defend option out of everything you do to both sides if possible. At least that's what we want. We have a couple of different balance sets we use. Base set, and I got pictures here in a minute. A couple of different end over sets, a couple of different ways we get into true trips, overload sets, and special formations. A little bit of empty. Bunch with the split ends tight and things we can do where we flip our tackle and tight end so we have a couple of extra guys eligible to the nub. There's an example of our ace formation here. It's a double slot. You can see our 2-point stance there, and you can see that our backs are kind of, he looks tighter than he normally does because he's not in the 2-point stance where his hands, so his feet are now where his hands used to be. And so it almost looks like a T many times, but ideally I want my slot, our halfbacks, to be slightly in front of our fullback. Two tight ends, double wing look is a balance set for us as well. We can still do a lot of our same offense out of it, but you can see it there. We can bunch our split ends. We mostly bunch them out of this set, but we can bunch them in any formation if we wanted to, where they take about a 3-yard split off the tackle. You can see our backs. This kid had a tendency to cheat a little further back than I liked him for him to do sometimes, but ideally it's about where this one is. End over sets, we have a tight end split end, still a normal 3-back backfield. Again, he's a little deep this time. This could be also a flip set where we have a tackle here and we have an eligible tight end there to the nub side. We can do that both ways. We have end over with both split ends on the same side where he's obviously an ineligible receiver. He's covered up. Pretty common flex bone formation. Now our true trips, I call them true trips because this guy's eligible. Trips with a tight end backside, single tie back, and twin receivers. We run a lot of our offense out of that. And then trips with an open backside or a split end backside, and we can do a lot of things out of too. And then a couple of overload sets that really have been good for us. And it makes the defense, sometimes they'll give you some things out of it that you didn't expect. But we have a tight end. It also could be a tackle over with a nub tight end to a tackle position eligible with 3 live receivers there. Still have a fullback. You notice, unless we do a little bit of empty, which is rare, it's just kind of a thing we do every now and then if somebody doesn't expect it. We don't run a lot of our offense out of it, so it's more of a gimmick thing. But our fullback, as long as we have our core fullback, we can run a lot of our plays. Overload, where we have all our receivers on one side. He's a little wide. He should be more in kind of split the difference mode right there. Defensive ID, a lot of our plays are tied to the front that a team is in, so we need to understand our defenses. And there's 5 basic fronts we identify when we get to line scrimmage on most plays. And it's the first thing we start teaching before we start teaching plays is they got to understand defenses. And I have pictures of each one of these too. We have 3 8-man fronts, what we would call a 40, a 30, and a 5-1. And then a 4-3 and a 50 is our 2 7-man fronts. And the cylinder is what defines the front to begin with. The way we'd identify shells or secondary defenders is, shell refers to safeties, 1, 2, or no safety look, or true 2, which is rare. And then DALE is an acronym. So we talk about shells and DALEs for depth, eyes, and leverage when we refer to how the corners play in this. Cover down defender would be a guy lined up in the number 2 slot position. Squat would be a true cover 2 to end over trips. Clover is a corners over look to end over trips. There's a look at a 40 defense, what we would call a 40. A split middle. A shade nose does not make that a 0 nose. So even though he's kind of in the gap, maybe on the center a little bit, we don't have a 0 nose or a 0 mic, so we would call that a 40. And that's typically just a 4-2 look, usually an 8-man front. A 30 look is an old 3-3-0 stack. Edge player, 5 techs, and stack backers somewhere in that position. 5-1 is similar to a 30, but usually it's an eagle down defender right here on the guard. Usually 3 tech, people call that a bear look. But that would be a 5-1, 0 stack. So quarterback has to understand the difference between a 30 and a 5-1 with the 0 stack. Our 2 7-man fronts, some type of 4-3 with a mic. It could be a traditional looking 4-3. It could be a 6-1 look 4-3. Usually a 2 safety deal going on in the secondary. And then a true 50. You got a 0 nose, backer somewhere in the guard area, man's on tackle, and then your ends right there with 2 safeties on top. So that's how we identify defenses. We have a couple line of scrimmage systems that most people use these days, some context or another. This allows us and gives us some freedom as coaches to put some responsibility on our players so we don't always have to call a perfect play. It can fall on one player, usually the quarterback, but also anybody in the core. We can check a play, call a play to the best side. We can package plays together. We can have alerts where we're alerting a blocking scheme for an expected look that's causing us problems. but we're not locked into it. Our kids know that they can't run it if it's not what that we expect. And then a packet or system we call scheme, similar to alert, except the lineman can control what scheme we're going to block for the call play. I think, most flex ball teams use a rhythmic cadence as their base cadence because your motion is tied to it. We're no different. We snap the ball usually on 1 or 2 counts. But I think it's important to also have a quick count and a keep a modest count of some type because they're going to get real used to your motion and your timing of your cadence. So our motions are learned and built into most plays. We don't ask our quarterback to give the heel. We just try to take more off his plate if possible. All right, last thing we'll say, I think under this, before we get to the combo triple players, is practice. We're a one platoon team, so all our kids are on one side of the ball and then we flip flop to the other. So we have to be really efficient with our practice time. So on the field, we want to be moving. We want to be repping. We want to be going. I tell our players and coaches all the time, if you want to talk to a kid, that's fine, but let's talk fast and let's don't stop the drill. But if we really need to be talking to a group of kids, we need to be inside doing some meeting. But on the field, we need to be moving. So very efficient time. We need to have our scout team and drill organization in place. Our endo drills have to be very multi-purpose. They can't be fluff drills. And our group and team segments need to be scripted. We do something called pods, core, perimeter, and team. And those are topics within themselves, as most of you know with your practices. Guys, I also have this at the end of our combo triple, but there's my contact information, Scott.Dietrich at parkviewbaptist.com, and my cell phone number there, 225-937-4374. You can call or text me. And again, whatever's mine is yours. But without skipping a beat, let me click over to our second presentation here on the combo triple. I don't like gimmicks and things just to say them, but our combo triple option play is a little bit of a combination of inside and outside veer. And because we're a 2-foot split team, and I guess I need to give a little bit of history of this. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, the guy I kind of cut my teeth on, the system we ran was not the traditional Georgia Tech Navy way. It was something that he had gotten from Emory Bellard, Coach Bellard, before he retired from Texas, most recently in the early 90s in Houston. And it was his style of offense at that time. So it was more of almost an outside veer play as a base rule, but it looks like inside veer against some looks, outside veer against others. So it is the starting point of our offense. I have since gone back and learned a lot about what's traditionally the true inside veer, but this is the way we do it. So take that for what it's worth. It's a start point in our offense that combines some principles of both inside and outside veer with one mesh point. We build a lot into this play to be able to adapt to different fronts and stunts and situations to get the best play, best crease at the point of attack. It's got the flexibility to be run from all of our sets to both sides. We can also change the dive key and or pitch key on certain looks versus problems we're having. So without changing our mesh point, I need to say that. Just in general, this is nothing new. I certainly didn't make it up. The advantages of triple option football. It's just a great play concept. 2-on-1, point of attack. You don't have to block 2 defenders, which creates good blocking angles everywhere else. I can tell you countless stories of defenders that we could not block with anybody we had on our team, but reading them and pitching off of them gave us a chance for success against them. It makes the defense play totally different than they want to. It ties them down to responsibility where they're just not pursuing or blitzing. They have to be a little more hesitant. They don't like that. I've never seen a defensive coach do a slow down drill. He wants to do a pursuit drill. Well, the option is going to slow them down or risk getting gashed. Tends to limit what a defense can do scheme-wise to be option sound, and this enhances the other parts of your offense. And it's an anywhere, anytime play. Concepts about our combo triple option play. First of all, we want to keep our quarterback in good read situations by trying to avoid a lot of fast pull pitch. I call them bam-bam situations if possible. We only have one dive read and one pitch defender. We don't read stacks. I will read a stack on midline. It's a whole different deal. But on triple, we try not to, and for several reasons. Our mesh point's wider, and also we just don't see that 4-3 hip stacked stunt enough to warrant really repping stack reads that it would take to get good at it. If we saw it every week, that might be different, but we just don't see it. We see a lot of 8-man front teams down here in South Louisiana that really crowd you. Some 6-1, but not a lot of the 4-3 hip games that I think college flex bone teams see. We try to protect the mesh. We will loop release sometimes. Not as a base rule. What you would call a naked mesh, we try to avoid that if possible. We're not locked into that. It's an adjustment. Our combo triple for the fullback is a B to C gap crease. And we never really want to be up in the A gap with us. So we're never going to ask me to cut behind the zero nose, like a true inside veer from what I understand. So we use midline to attack our A gaps. In our base play, we're in an edge, or excuse me, on the edge, we're in a load scheme. We call it a wall block. And we have to adjust to being an arc scheme. I think a lot of inside veer teams are the other way around, where they're in an arc play until they check to load. Basic position rules. Everything for us is based on where the dive key and pitch key. Everything works off to identifying those two defenders. Each position must know if they're blocking for dive, quarterback, or pitch for proper leverage and aims. We tell our kids all the time, ID the dive key and the pitch key and work from there. So depending on if you're in the front, if you're on the edge, if you're on the perimeter. Our dive key, we define it a little differently than true inside veer. He is the second defensive lineman in this defensive structure. And I'll show you that in each scenario, each of the major fronts. We define our pitch key as a first secondary defender or force defender. It would be the rover in an 8-man front, and it would either be a safety or corner decision in a 2-safety shell, depending on who the receiver didn't block. Okay, if we run it to the nub side or away from trips, there may only be one guy left. But that's how we define who our dive key and pitch key are on our combo triple play. Our quarterback, fullback, basically, you'll be mesh read technique, and I'll talk a little bit about that tonight, guys. As if you run option, you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of coaching that goes into that. We spent a lot of time, and that could be a talk within itself. So I'm going to abbreviate it tonight, but just know that that's not something that you rush through, and it's not something to be taken for granted. That is a critical phase of running option football. Our tiebacks, which are our slots. Our play side is in a wall block on the play side backer. He's blocking for the quarterback. He's going to fit outside the dive key unless it widens and he naturally goes underneath. When the tight end is present, he's going to, what we call a chase block. He's going to go to the next secondary defender to pass the pitch key. Since he's blocking for the quarterback, he's not going to go inside the box to attack a backer. He's going to block him on a path, just like most teams do when they're in a load scheme. Our backside is our pitch back. We talk about a latent fast motion. He's working to a 4x5 to 1 to 2 yard relationship off the quarterback's near shoulder. We talk about expecting it, catching it, stretching it, running off the perimeter. Go fast and go late and go fast is what we tell him, and it's tied to our cadence, as I mentioned earlier. Our O-line rules really abbreviated, guys. Again, this is an overview of our play, not a lot of detail. We call it combo and cutoff blocking. Our 4 and 5 is what we call our combo triple, is combo cutoff blocking. Inside of the dive key for the fullback in the B to C gap. That's what we're blocking for. Our play side linemen are in a combo blocking scheme that's based on the front and the alignment of the defenders. Most specifically, the first down lineman, who's the defender, number 1 down lineman inside the dive key, and then the backer. The covered play side O-lineman play side calls for the combo. Mug backers walked up, knocks off combos just like it would in any play. We can't combo the backers if they're walked up, so it becomes more of a base blocking play. Backside, we're using a combination of scoop, cutoff, or switch blocking based on the look from the center on back. The center rule is simply this on combo triple. If he's uncovered, doesn't have a zero nose, then he's involved in play side combo blocking. If he's covered by a zero nose, he is scooping to a backside backer. So that's basically his rule there. But that's very abbreviated, guys, very brief, but where our blocking rules start, certainly for our linemen. All right, out on the perimeter, Our play side split in defines the shell. If it's a one shell, he's basically stalking. We could have him in a push block. That would be more of a game adjustment if it was a good free safety. I have that drawn up for you. If it was a press corner, he's probably just going to run off, which is a technique within itself, as you know. Against two shell, he's going to crack the safety ball if it's clean. Clean is usually 6 yards or deeper into the boundary. Or if it's true two, which we don't get a lot of true cover two. You know, old school, hard corner, deep safety on the hash, cover two corner playing from outside in. If we get true cover two, it's usually in a long down the distance situation, 2 minutes. Somebody expecting us to throw the ball. Otherwise, I think we're going to rush for a lot of yards that night. We just don't get that look. On start blocking, we tell our receivers they're blocking for the pitch. So they ought to be nose-to-nose leverage. If they're going inside the crack, they're really blocking for the ball. That means who could ever end up with the ball, they're trying to get underneath that safety, far shoulder to far shoulder. Could end up being the fullback that he's blocking for if it's a give and we crease him, or even the quarterback turning up in the alley. Backside, nothing fancy. We're just going to use our cutoff technique. We're sprinting to the middle field, blocking for the ball if the play's still going by the time we get there, or if it cuts back. Versus zero press, both sides were usually running them off, playing what I call 9-on-9 football. And we do see that sometimes. Good athletic teams want to play what I call a smother and recover front. They got, whether it's 50 or a 4-3-6-1 look, and they're press man on you, and everybody else is playing in the box or fairly tight. So that's our perimeter rules with the split ends. Our tight end, when we use a tight end, like I said earlier, tight end is not a base position for us, but it is a critical position. And it's one that has helped us over the years to get some schemes established. And when we have problems on the edge, as we'll get to some of our adjustments to this play in a little bit, it can really help us. So some flex ball teams almost never use a tight end. I don't know exactly what percentage I use one, but I know every week I want to have them ready because they can answer and help you solve some problems that you might be encountered during the course of a ball game. His rule is the same as a tie back. He is the wall blocker. The only difference we tell our tight end when you go in there to wall block is he's blocking for the quarterback, but if he's able to go inside the end fairly easy, he'll make a Ted call, and he's blocking for the fullback. And also, there's times when he gets around that dive key quick enough that the backer's close enough where he actually ends up blocking for the fullback, and we call that more of a nail block than a wall block. So we allow our tight ends to do that simply because he's up on the line of scrimmage. You know, he's a yard closer to making that block than our slots are, our halfbacks. Backside, if you're tight end, he's going to basically cut off the backside C-gap on his own track. If there's no C-gap defender, he can release and chase to the middle of the field in that situation. Nothing fancy there. All right, a little bit about our mesh, guys. You see a couple of pictures there of kids in our state championship game this year. Number 11 was a fullback, but we alternated him with another kid. We keep it very, very simple. And I'm knocking on wood when I say this. We did not fumble one mesh this year, and we made it to our state final. So we had one open week, so 14 ball games. Very, very proud of that. But we rep it every day. I mean, that is our first drill in practice. We have a shoot. We have mesh boards. And we have a little routine. We even do it as our pregame warm-up. Those kids do not go a day without meshing. And that's just our warm-up. Of course, they get it in drills and live read and team situations as well. I tell them we cannot ever assume that that's in place and we can just disregard it. A couple of concepts, and this is, like I said, very abbreviated. We only have one triple mesh point, so we have a very consistent mesh. And so we're able to get comfortable in our aiming point and react to make the crease right. We're a B-gap crease team, which y'all know is wider than a lot of inside veer teams who are more hitting on the guard, maybe the inside leg of the guard. We hit the B-gap as our true mesh point. We'll learn to cheat the crease with the fullback based on the type of crease we have pre-snap and read it on the run. In other words, make the crease right is what we tell our fullbacks. But that's one thing about our two-point stance that helps in this process is they can identify the crease and then they have a pre-snap thought process based on the look. just some overall things about teaching the mesh. Practice for us is not productive until we can do two things, and that's why I hate to start spring ball or anything until we have this a great snap and the meshing. From there, our practices on offense can be at least with our backs. Now, our linemen can get down there and knock heads all day long, but our backs, we can't run plays as a unit, especially in the backfield, until these two things are in place. We teach the mesh backwards. I actually start by hooking them up and gradually, step by step, moving them backwards. We may take days, sometimes weeks, usually just a matter of days before we run a full speed mesh. And that's what our new kids, our established returning starters, certainly don't have to do this unless they're just part of the drill. We don't introduce reads to a new quarterback until the physical fundamentals are in place. His feet, hands, eyes, and pre-snap thought process, which I'll get to next. Ball security is always first. And one of the knocks on this offense is, fumbles on meshes and pitches. We preach that the ball should never be more secure than four strong hands on it with the quarterback and the fullback. We want a clean hookup every time. The mesh is a feel thing. You give the kids some basic guidelines and coach the obvious mistakes and errors that's going to get them in a bad mesh, and you rep the heck out of it. They're athletes. They're going to get a feel for it, and not all kids look the same. My quarterback this year was 5'7". I've had a quarterback in this offense that was 6'4", and everything in between. So they're not always going to look the same, but the end result needs to be the same. The quarterback's in control, of course. His pre-snap thought is to think, give, react to a pull, in doubt, give it early on until they get instinctive. Sometimes an experienced quarterback, that guy that's trying to play both mesh and fullback and quarterback, the quarterback will learn to bait him. Early on, that kid usually controls the quarterback, but as he gets experienced and instinctive, he gets better at being able to control that situation. So experience is critical. But we talk to him about being decisive, make a decision before the ball gets out your framework. All right, we have two types of creases that are very, very important to understand. Even though we only have one mesh point, it's a mental cheat. It's not an inside veer and an outside veer where we're hitting on the guard, hitting on the tackle. It's a mental cheat through the B gap that can make this play be able to adjust to different fronts and get the benefit of both worlds, if that makes sense. First of all, we got to find the dive key. Identify the next down lineman inside the dive key. If he's on the guard, then it's a clear crease or a tight crease. And the way the fullback attacks that, mentally he's going to cheat his crease, which is the inside half of the B gap. With a 2-foot split, that's about a 6-inch cheat. That's not going to affect the quarterback's step, his reach, or anything. And I tell him his arms are like shock absorbers. He's going to naturally adjust with the fullback, even if you had a fullback just hit a normal crease wide anyway, or tight. So he naturally adjusts. And the fullback in that case is thinking ball to square up on a pull because it is a little bit of a shorter edge. There's an example of a clear crease. 4-3 front. There's our dive key. Fullback, quarterback know that that's the next thing inside. That's a clear crease to the B gap. He's going to be, you can see, we're 2 foot. He's going to be more to the inside half. His run pre-snap thought process is here to square up. If we get it, he's just going to stay in the crease if it's soft. If he doesn't, he's squaring his shoulders because that means this guy's coming down on him, and we want to shorten the edge for the quarterback to turn the corner. Cloudy crease or wide crease is a little different. Very important to understand this. We find the same dive key, then if the next down lineman is on the tackle, as in like a true 50 look, he's the movement key. That means we're going to run off of that block. And that's where it looks more like an outside veer, whereas clear crease looks more like an inside veer. The fullback thought process on this is more cheat to the outside half of the B gap, and he's going to be a B to C gap runner. In other words, he's going to run off the combo with the tackle. There's a clear cloudy crease right here. True 50 defense. We read the second down lineman in any front, but a true 50 is this guy. Where I know inside veer, there he is, pitching off of him. Us, we're a little different. We're reading this guy for dive, pitching off secondary. We can get to a play where we read him and pitch off him. It's midline triple, which is a lot friendlier mesh because it's over the center, and he's got to come to us instead of us going to him. So we would combo this guy, and our fullback would have a B to C gap running progression. If the B gap stays soft, he stays in it. If this guy pinches and we combo up, he'll wiggle the C gap underneath this defensive end who's probably a quarterback player there. So that's a cloudy crease. All right, pitch phase. We pitch the football as the defense dictates. And a lot of high school teams, look at you and they try to determine what they want to give you. Some nights we don't pitch as much. Some nights we pitch a lot. So it's all about what the defense is giving us in any particular game. Just like the mesh, ball security is always first. We got to get the physical mechanics of good pitching in place before we worry about reads. We only have one pitch key. I tell our quarterbacks, here's our golden rules of pitching. We don't pitch it if we don't get to the pitch key, unless we have a leverage situation, which is a whole topic in itself. If the pitch key doesn't show up, we run it. If we're in a mess, under stress, blind, or in a bind, or if there's an extra defender going to the pitch man, we're outnumbered. He shouldn't pitch in those situations. Those are the ones that will cause you fumbles. We want a very consistent pitch relationship from our back, about 4 to 5, and about 1 to 2 off the quarterback's near shoulder, as I mentioned earlier. Basic pitch techniques. When do we pitch it? A lot of coaches ask, man, when are y'all teaching to pitch it? Well, when do you tell the point guard to pass it, is what I ask him. It's a feel thing. He wants to be aggressive with the ball, attack the pitch key to a point that guy can't play both. A lot of times it's natural what he should do with the ball. Sometimes it's not very, it's obvious. It's not always obvious. Sometimes there's a gray area, slow play, and mixing it up. So he's got to have a pre-snap thought process. We tell him be aggressive. Pitch it when the pitch key is committed to you by either turning his shoulders attacking you, or he's square and you get to him and there's nowhere to run, then you kick it out. If the pitch key's playing soft enough to try to play both, we want to be aggressive, maybe a little head ball fake if we can. If we get a fast play defender, we might have to sit pitch. And in general, this may be clinic talk. I apologize if it is. We attack a slow pitch key fast and a fast pitch key slow because he's coming to us. But you just have to rep these things. And I don't know if our kids could put it into words, but he can react to it after doing it many, many times. Our pitch back techniques, which we call tiebacks again, it's a late almost no motion, flat and fast through the fullback's original alignment. We want him to get out there wide. Don't turn up. Don't be behind. If we miss, we want to miss wide on our pitch relationship. We want to start looking at the ball once we pass the fullback's original alignment, working for that same depth and distance we talked about. Expect to catch it, stretch it. And once the quarterback commits to run, I think it's important because sometimes we have a pitch key that's going to come knock the fool out of our pitch back. Protect yourself and try to avoid him and get downfield and play football and maybe make a block. But that's basically what we teach our pitch back. But same thing, it's repetition that gets them a feel for it. Here's a look at it against our 4 and 5, our combo triple against all fronts and dive keys. And triangle pitch key is in a square. Simple 4-man front there, 4-2. We got a combo with the guard tackle and a veer block, backside cutoff, and there's your diving pitch with a stalk out there. Okay, very, very simple look against a 40 defense. This is all out of our ace double slot set. 30 defense, the way we identify second down lineman is kind of tied to a 4-man front. We are 30 defense here at our school. We run this, so after competing against this one spring, it kind of how to count it and identify it. We view this as though, if this makes sense, as though these two guys were the first down lineman to each side in a 4-2, and all they did was stack them up. And so we count the 0 stack as the first down lineman when it comes to counting this defense. In a 5-1, eagle look, there's number 2, there's the rover. Anytime the backer's in there really tight, our play side tie back is almost automatically going to free. We use a glance and go technique because we feel like we have a really good chance to get him with our combo right here by the play side tackle and guard. 4-3 defense. As a general rule, we don't usually see a traditional 4-3 where these guys are in the box, but that's how I have it drawn up, and I'll show you adjustments in a minute. There's your dive key. We're in a safety look out here. So our pitch key is one of these two guys. You may say, well, the coach, the quarterback doesn't know he's pitching off of. When it's a safety shell, he's got more than enough time if it reads pull. He's ready to pitch off to safety because he's closer. He'll react to the crack block and pitch off the corner, which probably won't be a pitch if it gets that far. 50 defense, again, as I said, we're reading this end on a cloudy crease dive key. Pitch key is one of these two guys with a combo on the tackle. All right. Now that's our base way out of our base set against all those looks. We're going to show you a few answers and adjustments to different looks, which also can be run with our same mesh point. And quarterback, fullback, or just work in clear and cloudy situations. If we're seeing a lot of hard squeezing by the defensive end, and maybe we go with a tight end, and they keep him what we call reduced. Reduced is when our normal dive key stays on the tackle, even with the alignment of a true tight end. We can run what we call a reduced scheme, where we actually change the dive key to this defender, the next man. So you may say, well, that's really outside veer. Yes, it is, but we don't force this play. In other words, if the end still played on the tight end here, we would not run this scheme. We only run it because he is reduced. So it's a cloudy crease, probably going to read give 9 out of 10 times, and our fullback is B to C gap wiggling. It's a great way to keep your fullback established against teams that are really bearing down on him and content on canceling him every time. Here's a backer adjustment. It's a call we make at the line. Most teams block 4-3 this way, where they make him dive, him pitch. For us, it's simply a call. Tie back instead of loading this backer, which we can do. But more times than not, when he's playing out here, if he's not a good matchup for us, we make a backer call, and there's dive and pitch. You don't see that front a lot, but that's a new pitch key for us. Loop release, we'll do a little bit, as I mentioned earlier. We're not locked into it. It's a naked mesh, which means he's uncontested to the mesh. So we want to be careful doing that, but when we do it, quarterback knows it. He's ready for his fastball, and we work on this read situation every day as well. But it's a loop release and only occurs against a 4-3. The way that we've come over the years of attacking a 6-1 is what we call tray. Basically reading the third defender on the line of scrimmage in the 6-1. We don't have, it's basically reduced without a tight end. And we just put the tackle on an island, and our fullback's going to make him right by running off of this. And we're making that 6-1 backer the dive key. And the reason we're doing this against this look is because, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to live and die with a bam-bam right here. Pull pitch all night long. Maybe they have a really good secondary and safety that come down and make arc block. And that's one disadvantage of this offense in high school is we cannot cut on the perimeter. Texas, I think, is the only NCAA state. And if you have some physical mismatches on the perimeter locked into an arc blocking scheme, it can get tough on you if that's where they're forcing the ball. So, again, we want to keep our fullback established if have the be available to do that if possible. Here's a Ted call. When we have a tight end and the defensive end is kind of playing in the 9 or it's not squeezing, we can call Ted and go in there and get the backer. And whenever we make a Ted call, tight end inside, these guard tackle know they're not responsible for the backer in here. They can go ahead and combo and get great movement on this down tag because now they're comboing to the backside backer. More times than not, it's going to be read and give, and it's just for a team that's trying to play you from inside out. Perimeter problems. We see a lot of this. Really good free safeties running alley out of an 8-man front. One way that we can combat this is just what we call a push block. We don't do this a lot because some of those same teams have a corner that replaces really good, and he's just as good an athlete almost and comes up and tackles your back. So, but this is one way that we work where we push. Once the corner bails at a point of 5 yards, and we put on the brakes and come in and attack the free. And yes, you are turning the corner loose, but he's hopefully not the same tackler in space the free is, and at least you got him softened up a little bit. We can also get a free by going an end-over formation and cracking him with our slot. If they're leaving 2 to the nub, some teams won't let you do that, but if they do, that's one way to handle that. Now we got an extra hat for the extra hat by the free. We'll also get trips, run the triple weak to get away from a good free safety or just to get away from numbers. Now, when we do that, we can pitch off the flat defender. We can do this out of an 8-man front. If the backer's blockable, we can also do it to a 4-3 front and make the backer on that edge the pitch key where he normally plays, just getting away from strength. We can also go to the nub side of end over. Teams that sometimes will go what I call a clover look, where they'll bring the corners over. I got this from Coach Wheaton up in Harding. You just run it to the nub side because it's dive key, pitch key. You still got a free safety issue to handle, but there's some other things you can do. We can get to some good double option plays. But as far as our triple, that's things what we would do. As I said, men, here's my contact information. I hate it to be brief on all those details. As y'all know, any involved play like that, there's a lot more detail in the coaching of it than just a few things. But that's our primary coaching points. But anything that I could do to help you or share with you, please don't hesitate. I'm going to be speaking more on that at the Houston Glazier Clinic, and as well as having video to support that and show you what we do. But it's truly been my pleasure to be with you this evening, and I'll help in any way I can and just share with you what's been good for us, and be glad to help you in that way. So, Kel, I guess I'll turn it back over to you and look forward to any questions you guys may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Coach. That was great. So in just a little bit, we're going to open up the floor for questions. Coaches, you can submit your questions by the questions section of your webinar control panel, just like Chatter IM. Or if you've dialed in using the telephone, you can click the button that looks like a small hand on the vertical toolbar sticking out from your webinar control panel.